Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Breath of Life Stories. My name is Lisa Bailey Brown, and I am the host of this podcast, which is sponsored by LifeVac Europe Limited. And it's about sharing stories that can help other people either become inspired or maybe feel like you're less alone, someone else has experienced something you're going through. So today I have the lovely Joannie Hugues with me, who is all the way across the other side of the world in Long Island in America. Joannie, you are a lovely lady who has created a charity, and not just a charity, but a law over in the US that is all about, prevention of choking in children. And JT's law is, I would say, it's in honor of JT, who was a lovely 3-year-old little boy who unfortunately did choke. And Joni's here today to educate everybody and explain about what she's doing and how things have evolved for her and the family over time. Joanie, so tell me a little bit about your story before everything happened. Tell us a little bit about you.
So my story before everything happened, I would say I'm a woman in my early 30s and I had 2 young children myself and I'm a working mom, keeping up with the household, keeping up with the children, keeping up with my husband at the time. And we're all just, doing our daily lives and going through it and enjoying life and also enjoying, every aspect that you can have of young children at that time. And I am very close to my sister-in-law and her family, who is JT's mom. And they had at that time, were planning a beautiful trip that I was actually quite jealous of. They were going and did go to Disney World and she out everything you could imagine to plan out. And, the hotels and the restaurants and the amusement parks, everything was planned to the T. And I was very jealous. I was so excited for them, living vicariously through their experience. And then I got a horrible phone call, excuse me,
That's all
learning
right, lovely.
learning about JT, he had choked while standing on line at an amusement park on a hot dog. And, those hours and days were very, very traumatic. It was something that was completely unexpected. And I couldn't fathom it. I was so close to the family and I love that boy so, so much as if he was my child myself because he was my godson. And I took that very seriously and I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. He was a healthy, happy child when I kissed him goodbye and then he's no more. So at that time, I did have internet use. So I started Googling because I just couldn't understand it. I wanted to know if this was a real thing, like children choke and die. It didn't make sense. The statistics and the stories that I saw and I read, I realized this is not a freak accident. This is quite common. I don't know why I didn't know it was quite common because I myself was handing my boys full hot dogs and I'm completely clueless about this danger. So at that moment, as soon as it clicked in my head that I'm clueless, I didn't know. I needed to make other parents know. I absolutely had to warn people. So that's how it started. And I just started talking about his story. And then in one of my Google searches, I came across this woman who showed me that there was actual federal law, and that's, for the whole states to recognize that choking is a danger. And she said to me, you should support this bill. It's a federal law and, you should try to get that passed. So I was trying to advocate for that. And there was no friction. It was going nowhere. And then she suggested to me, maybe you should start with your state and speak to your elected officials and see if you could do something with that. So at that time, there was really no emails. Fax was a big deal. So unbeknownst to my employment here, I was constantly on the fax machine, sending out these letters and contacting and calling everyone who would listen to me. And they listened. And I had an assembly member and then I had a senator and they signed this bill called JT's Law. And the governor signed it in 2008 and it became a law. And JT's Law really is just a start. It's not a finish product in my
Mhm.
mind. It's just right now the New York Health Department is required to maintain a web page so that if people were to do their Google search, they'd come to this page and they would learn about certain high risk choking foods. They would learn choking rescue procedures and different ways to keep your children safer. So that's one aspect of it. And then they are also required every 4 years to run a report to the governor to see what foods have statistically been high risk choking in New York. So something to a continued effort to monitor this deadly, event that could occur. So that's what JT's law is. And then after I had gotten that law enacted, I thought I was done and I could take a breather and I could go about my life and not even think about this obsession of mine because it really was needed to not fixate on the death of him, but more of bringing life into him again in some way.
Yeah.
So JT's law was that. And I thought I was done. And then I was realizing no one's talking about JT's law. No one even knows it exists. So what should I do now? So then I started a Facebook page and I started doing that presence on there. And I was just informing people again constantly, just that I would monitor the internet for different news articles about people and everything. So to this day, I do post every day on JT's Law, something educational, something to warn people, preventative measures. And then I realized, well, maybe I should make a charity. So then I made a charity because I thought it would be a good idea to get some funds for JT's Law so that I can advertise better with a website. I have a website, and because I really believe it's just education. It's information that needs to reach people.
Yeah.
If I'm not reaching people, they don't know. So again, I post every day on my Facebook page, and now I have a web page, and then I try to make, I'll show my educational materials. So I have magnets that I sell and try to boost it for people. And then through the charity, through my efforts with my sister-in-law who's a nurse practitioner, not JT's mom, my sister-in-law, she is the one who helps me with these workshops. And what a JT's workshop is we'll go to schools or libraries or really whoever has, I would hope for 10 or more people to allow me to speak about choking prevention and for her to provide training in choking rescue procedures. So those are called JT's workshops, and we do that at local schools, libraries, we've done churches. So that's part of JT's initiative. And then I like to give a voice to parents whose children have passed away because they too don't want their children to die in vain. They want their stories to be told and hopefully people learn through their stories. So I have parents who reach out to me and then I share their stories on my Facebook page. And that's really what JT's Law is about, that education. And then fantastically through the course of, since 2003 when JT passed away until now, there has been a wonderful device called the Life that I am a strong supporter of. It has over 6,000 life saves, and I try to get them into schools. So that's my effort as well, is I'll reach out to schools and say, would you accept this gift? I have a partnership that they'll give me the LifeVac school kit at a discounted price so that I could, since I'm a charity, if you donate to my charity, I can give the gift to schools. So it's people who have to recognize how serious choking is, recognize how dangerous schools are without having this device there. And it's horrendous. It's horrendous to me to think that children go into schools and they don't have the proper protocols in place to protect them from this danger. There's high-risk choking foods on the menu. There's teachers know choking rescue procedures. And I'm not condemning the teachers. They just don't recognize this danger and have not been taught what to do. And then choking rescue procedures sometimes doesn't work. So now the LifeVac has 6,000 saves. Why wouldn't we have this on the premises? So that's
absolutely.
So that's one of my initiatives with schools. I try to make sure they have the perfect protocols in place. Removal of high-risk choking foods, teachers and staff trained in choking rescue procedures, and then the LifeVac on the premise. That's the ideal.
So in the UK, we have the back blows and abdominal thrusts. Is it the same as in the UK, or do you do things differently?
No, it is the same now, interestingly enough. So when I first started my Google searches and learning all about choking rescue procedures, it was the American Heart Association who just recognized the abdominal thrusts. So they didn't recognize back blows. And then we have also the Red Cross. So the Red Cross, they did recognize back blows and abdominal thrusts. So now through my view of all stories that had come my way, I was seeing, yes, both work. So I don't know why at that time American Heart Association limited it to just abdominal thrusts. But now, recently, in the past few months, everyone's unison. So we have
Yeah.
now American Heart Association and the Red Cross. They both have the same procedures, which would be abdominal thrusts and back blows.
Yeah. So it's interesting because obviously I speak to lots of different people on social media about LifeVac, and some people love it, some people hate it, some people don't understand it and think that we're trying to take away from the first aid procedures that are in place, but that's not the case at all. And I know that speaking to somebody over in Australia, they have a different way of doing things again. So across the whole world, everybody has a different way of carrying out first aid in a choking emergency. So in that sense, to me, it shows that if there are so many different ways of doing this around the world, the one thing that can be there as a backup for the whole world, and it's not different for everyone, so it's the same no matter where you are, and that is LifeVac. And also, I don't know about in the US, but here in the UK, the success rate of the first aid maneuvers is around 70%, and that's in a perfect environment with somebody who's medically trained. But we all know that there's no such thing as a perfect environment. Perfect doesn't exist, and there's no 100% guarantee with anything. We are very lucky with LifeVac because we have such a high success rate with it. The only time it hasn't worked has been when somebody's gone into cardiac arrest, so obviously you can't continue to use LifeVac, and if the blockage is really low down. So from our perspective, we, as I say, those 6,000 plus lives that have been saved now, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the fact that LifeVac was invented. So we are obviously trying to, in the UK, make sure, like you do, many people know about it as possible. Because if you don't know about something, then you don't actually know that it's there, that you can use it, can you see? So people like you and Louis Steeper for the Oliver Steeper Foundation in the UK both do similar things, but in your own countries, if you like. And it's really interesting to hear you talking about how this all came about. And I think one of the things that is really important for you to mention today would be about the actual the safety of food side of things and what people can do. Because I know that you're a big, that's one of the things you want to say. It's prevention, prevention. So
Exactly.
what do you tell parents to do or suggest that they should do, kind of thing?
Thank you for that. So I tell parents that they need to be very conscious of foods that they give to young kids. And I
Mhm.
define young kids. Now, again, I'm not a medical professional. My
Mhm.
education is through self-taught reading, and I am around doctors and nurses, like I said, my sister-in-law is as well. I've received guidance from many other people. So I define young children as children under the age of 5, those
Mhm.
with missing or loose teeth, those with the inability to sit still properly, and those with special needs. So that's my
Yeah.
criteria for young kids. And then certain high risk choking foods, obviously, I would discuss the hot dog. In America, hot dog is served all the time. That's a staple food for Americans. It's just easy,
Mhm.
it's tasty, and it's just convenient. So it's at amusement parks, it's at family barbecues, it's just served
Mhm.
constantly, and it's given to young kids. If you decide to give, again, my definition of young kids, if you decide to give a hot dog to a young kids, you just have to slice it lengthwise into 4 long strips and then dice that into small pieces. Simple
Yeah.
step. Now, again, anyone could choke on anything at any time. I could tell you to
Yeah.
slice and dice, and your child may still choke. So
Mhm.
next thing I say to people is please supervise your children when they eat. That should be an event itself. We're not on our phone. We're not watching TVs. We're not,
Mhm.
we're sitting down and we're watching them eat because it only takes 240 seconds, 4 minutes before the brain begins to die from lack of oxygen. So now we know, people who know, choking is a silent killer. So if you are feeding your child and your child begins to choke and you turned away to, just do the dishes. I mean, God knows I've done that many times, or answer a phone
Mhm.
call. You turn away, you're losing precious minutes. You don't want to lose those
Yeah.
minutes. So it's just so imperative that you watch your children eat. I know that sometimes we get distracted. I understand that, but you don't want to lose a minute because that's quick.
Yeah.
I mean, 4 minutes, that just flies by. So again, I'm a big advocate for if you're going to give your child hot dogs, please slice and dice. Grapes is another big choking hazard.
Yeah.
And again, grapes are very common because children like grapes. Parents recognize that as a healthy food snack. So you think you're doing
Mhm.
a really good thing. You're giving your child grapes. But if you look at a grape, you see the size. I mean, it's circular, it's hard, it's slippery. So I also tell parents, assess some of the characteristics: slippery, if it's sticky, the size of it, the shape of it. Recognize the
Mhm.
characteristics, and then you might have to do something. So with grapes, I strongly recommend parents to cut it into 4. So
Yeah.
again, it's just an extra step. Yes, how long could it take? And there's actually gadgets now, that you could pop a grape into,
Yeah.
slices it into 4. And I understand sometimes children are very sensory and they don't like the feel of certain, if you've given them a full grape, and now all of a sudden you're cutting it up, they don't want it. I understand that. But then over time, they'll see that as the normal. That's why with
Yeah.
the hot dog slicing and dicing, another parent is giving the full hot dog and you're slicing and dicing. Well, maybe you're looking at them, but maybe they're looking at you going, hey, why are they doing that? And then I really would hope that if they listen to, please share JT's story, because he was a healthy, happy, vibrant young boy who died from choking
Yeah.
to death on a hot dog. So I believe that if it was, but you don't know. If it was sliced and diced, he might have still choked, but I'm just trying to give people chances to avoid choking. It could still
Yeah,
happen.
absolutely. These things can still happen, and they can happen to anyone, can't they? This is the thing. There's no Lewis said it on the podcast that the one thing that choking doesn't do, it doesn't discriminate. Doesn't matter who you are, what age, anybody.
And
If you eat food, and in some cases it's not always food either. It's something that causes a blockage, and we have people who have picker and they put things in their mouth all the time, and and I guess people, like you say, with illnesses, muscular dystrophy, or all these different things, and swallowing can be a problem. And like you say, if people are on their own, and again, that's where LifeVac, you can use LifeVac on yourself and self-applicate and save your own life. So it is fantastic, really, that there is something out there.
the LifeVac is the backup plan. We did a backup plan. Why would you deprive yourself of a backup? I don't think a parent really recognizes how frantic they will become if they're trying to choke and choking rescue procedures are not working. And then they're
Yeah.
waiting for, emergency services to come, which could be 8 minutes away, 10 minutes away, depending on how far. And I already just told you it takes 4 minutes before the brain begins to die. So you honestly deserve to give yourself the gift of the life back so that you could alleviate that, franticness somewhat. And hopefully, again, I'm not going to tell you that the life back is going to work. I don't know if it is going to work. I'd rather have that trying. I'd rather try, have another chance.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of those things, we here in the UK, we have insurances for everything. We have a seat belt. We don't have a seat belt because we're going to crash. We have it in case we crash to
Exactly.
protect us. We have car insurance because if we have a crash, it's going to help us and, save us some money, and all these things that we do to prepare. But the one thing that we're talking about that could basically be there as a backup if needed, that could save your child's life, your grandchild, your parents, your own life. Why say no because something is a mandatory? Because this is the other thing. So here it isn't, it's a legal option available in the UK, but it is not mandatory part of first aid. So people say, well, if it's not mandatory, I'm not having it. Or say things like, if it ever becomes mandatory, I will refuse to lose it. In America, you've just got the FDA approval, haven't you? Or explain a little bit about that, what that means for you guys.
Well, that gave what I like to call street credit. So it means that that gave a boost to LifeVac for people who would always say, well, it's not FDA approved. Meanwhile, there are a lot of medical devices, which it's not really a device, but I would say like a Band-Aid is not medically approved, FDA approved, because it doesn't need to be. It goes on the outside of the body, so you don't need
Mhm.
FDA approved. But LifeVac fought to get some type of approval from the FDA because it really deterred people not having that tag. It
Yeah.
really, yes. So this was a big win for the LifeVac team, and I'm very happy that it has that now. I don't think it needed it in the sense that people should just recognize the numbers of life saves. But here's another thing. Here's another, feather in your hat. So a
Yeah.
great, kudos to the LifeVac team for pushing and pushing and pushing and having the FDA recognize how fantastic this device is.
No, it really is. And I know people could think, oh, well, she's biased because she works for LifeVac.
And I would like to know, for those people who are biased, I had met the LifeVac team about a decade ago, I would say, was during my first workshop at JT's Law. I'm at a library.
Mhm.
I'm performing my educational speech, and my sister-in-law is performing choking rescue procedures, and the LifeVac team was in the audience. I've never heard of the LifeVac. I've never seen any advertisements for it, nothing. Author Lee is in the audience, who is now a friend of mine, I would consider, and he raises his hand at the end and says to me, "So what do you think of a device that looks like a plunger and it goes over the mouth and you push it and it pops out an item that's choking a victim?" And I said to him, "Well, that sounds very interesting, but I can't support that unless I start seeing some life saves." And he's like, "Okay." And I said to myself in my head, "Okay." And I started watching and listening. And like I said, I'm on that internet and I started seeing life save here, life save there. I only needed a handful before I was on board. I didn't need 6,000. You know,
Yeah.
one life save, and this is fantastic. 6,000 blows your mind. So again, when those people say to you, "I don't know, 6,000 lives, that's a lot." And that's people who actually report in that they, the people it could have saved.
Yeah. Yeah, because not everybody does do that. Not everybody will want to report it, but perhaps won't even think about it, to be honest. And I think that your little story there about how you found LifeVac is really interesting because, like I say, you didn't know what it was, and to begin with, you said, I can't support it at the minute. Once you'd realised, and I think this is what is happening more and more. I had a first aid trainer here in the UK. Since I joined LifeVac in January, every day pretty much, is it mandatory yet? Is it mandatory yet? And I said, no. I said, it's going to take a little while before. And then out of the blue, last week or the week before, he sends me a screenshot of a receipt. He'd ordered a LifeVac, and I said, "Whoa, you've ordered a LifeVac? What is wrong with you?" Because he'd been so like he wasn't going to. And his words were, "I can't argue with 6,000 lives saved." And then he went on to share lots of posts about it. And then he messaged me and says, "Wow, it started already. People coming at him, saying to him, it's not this, it's not that." And actually quoting misinformation, which gets a lot happens here. It's like they start quoting stuff from the past that is not actually the case. Because here, LifeVac, the Resource Council we have, they basically said that they cannot be for or against LifeVac because it lacks in evidence, and it lacks in evidence because not because the evidence what we've given is lacking in any way. It's the amount of evidence we've got. We haven't got as much evidence as what the old Heimlich maneuver had because that's over 50 years ago. So we're constantly battling, and LifeVac in general, we're battling across the whole world because everybody's got different systems and processes. But the common denominator in all of this is that this is about saving lives, and it's about human beings, and it doesn't matter how old you are, where you live in the world, you know. And we spoke about this when we chatted last time, didn't we, about the knock-on effect and the ripple of what happens afterwards, because that may well be just over 6,000 lives that are saved. But that's 6,000 families. And then you've got the teachers at the schools that taught the children or the people in the care homes. And it goes so much wider.
Or even people who hear the story. Anytime I hear, when a family shares their tragic story with me and I am, blessed enough to be in a position to share it for them, I'm a complete stranger, so it affects everyone. A child dying affects everyone. So
Yeah.
again, we have ways to prevent it through education. Then we have ways to combat it through choking rescue procedures, and then we have the plastic backup plan, the LifeVac, which is a device that has over 6,000 life saves. So we have a plan now of action that everyone should be doing.
So at the moment, at JT's Law, you're doing all of these sort of educational things and everything. Is this something that you have taken wider now than your area? Is this across the whole of
No,
America?
well, my Facebook presence, I find it amazing how, I'll have people from Australia commenting on my posts, and I do have a big support group around the world, social media. So I do have that. As far as my efforts on Long Island go, I'm limited to my space and my time as well. JT's Law really is kind of a one-man show. So I do my best. I do my best, and I am constantly advocating in a way that I can, as much as I can. But
Hmm.
I don't foresee, I do have families sometime reach out to me and say, my child passed away, and what can I do? How can I get a law in my state? So
Mm.
I've given guidance. So that's how JT's law has gone overseas or across, different states.
Yeah, I love that. That's how I found you actually on Facebook. I think since I've been working with Life, you see things, don't you? It just pops up, and that's how I found you on there and was looking. And it is amazing how many other charities and things there are around the world, and that are doing the same thing. And like you said, if it's not something that you can do all on your own, but if everybody in every place had someone like you, it would be an amazing thing, really, because like you say, word of mouth, people saying, I've had this experience. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, really. And it's not just about choking incidents. There's going to be other stories as well, but it's about something that can make a difference, that makes a change. And this is a tragic story in its own right. JT should be here now, and if LifeVac could have been invented before then, maybe he would have been. But the point of it is that it's about, as you said, LifeVac is an extra layer of protection, and you hope you never need it, but if you do, you've got it. And that is the biggest thing for me. So what so we'll ask you a question now. So what is the one thing, and if you've got more than one thing, because Lewis was the same, he can't pick
Mm.
one thing. But if there's something, some sort of message that you would give out to parents, businesses, anybody that's listening, what would that be about your experience with JT and what you're trying to achieve?
Well, again, as I keep saying, I really believe it's important that we recognize that certain foods are a higher risk for choking. I believe that with young children, they have motor skills that are not developed as much. Again, they don't have a full set of teeth. They have deciduous teeth, which are baby teeth that are meant to fall out. So there's certain foods they cannot handle at all. So that's why I'm a big advocate of how you prepare it. So we need to cut it up, slice and dice, boil it down, or avoid completely. What I would say to people is obviously a child's death, no parent, family should ever go through ever. I took this journey to advocate. Other people take other journeys. I just
Yeah.
hope that people take the time to listen to the stories of people who want to share the stories, because there is a message in there. And the message might be simply hug your child tighter.
Hmm.
Life is precious. Time quick. You don't know how much time you have with people. So maybe that could be a message itself. So
Hmm.
obviously, these law is all about choking prevention, but it is about a family that was broken due to this, a child, a love. So the message is clear, love. I do this out of love. I only do this for JT.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for decades, and I only do this for JT. I would have shut down my computer a long time ago. It's just
Mm.
it really is. It's stressful sometimes, it's sad sometimes, but there is a message to be told, and I want people to hear his story. He choked and died on a hot dog at the age of 3. That's the truth. How can we
Hmm.
prevent it? How can we prevent your child from going through this, your family going through this? So that's my message. It's about love, and it's about hope, because life back to me is a sign of hope that there is a backup plan, and that's it. That's all I have.
I think that is a beautiful message. And, love and kindness and all that kind of thing is what this is all about. Yes, LifeHack is a product and it's a business, but the greater story behind it is why it was invented. And I say it's an invention with intention, and that intention is to save lives. And I think you're remarkable in what you've done, because it has been a traumatic experience from your family. But there's one thing for sure, that JT's legacy is probably and has probably saved lots of lives. And that's a really, it gives me goosebumps just saying it. It's just one of those things, isn't it? I mean, I'm like you. If you've got, when Lewis was talking and when you were talking and you're getting emotional about it, it's literally, I'm like, don't cry. Thank you so much, Joanie. You know what? I hope that I get to meet you one day.
Thank you so much for giving JT's law a spotlight. I love this. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Oh, you're very welcome. So, thank you again for being a guest, and thank you to everybody that has taken the time to have a listen. I know that Joni is across the other side of the world, but this podcast is going to be shared everywhere. So, regardless of where you are, and regardless of what you know at this moment in time, or you knew before you listened to this about choking awareness, please do take some of the things that Joni has said and transform the way that you do things at home. I know in the UK, hot dogs aren't necessarily something that is fed to children the way that it is there, but there's other things, and that's the main part of it, is making sure that we protect the people around us and our little people. They're the future. And they are the most vulnerable, as are the over 65s. But like we said before, there's no discrimination. I hope it hasn't caused anybody too much upset. And if you have experienced choking, we send you a lot of love, and just try to remember that everything that happens to people like with Joanie and her family, they've been able to help others, and we're very grateful. So thank you. I will be back with another guest very soon. And until then, you've been listening to Breath of Life Stories, sponsored by Life. I'm Lisa, and I'll be back again soon. Take care. Thank you.